Hello and welcome to the MovieKing Podcast. My name is David Jurmann and I'll be your host. On today's episode, I'm going to review the film 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. And in the second half, I'm going to review the movie Mercy. So starting off with 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, my opinions on this franchise are kind of all over the place, and I think it's safe to say I'm not in the majority opinion, and that's okay. 28 Days Later is probably one of the most important and influential zombie movies ever made, and for that I completely respect it. There's also this very old-looking and vintage aesthetic it has that you almost never see, and I believe that original film was shot on a camcorder. I could be wrong, but it has a very different look to it, and a lot of people love that movie. I'd say it's just decent. Then you had 28 Weeks Later, which abandoned that aesthetic and was more of a standard Hollywood zombie movie. It lost a lot of the drama and mood from that original film, and I would say that's easily the worst installment in the franchise. And then just last year, we got 28 Years Later, a movie that I didn't expect to like nearly as much as I did. And that movie was shot on an iPhone, which definitely brought back the unique vibe to this franchise. And I was very skeptical about it being shot on iPhone, because I'm like, a movie shot on a phone is a very risky move. It kind of works, though, in the context of this franchise, and I think it actually looked pretty good. And the movie also just had a lot of heart and soul to it, which really, I think, made me appreciate the film a lot more. I mean, I think 28 Years Later was probably, to me, the best film up to that point. And one of the best parts of that movie to me is this doctor, played by Ray Fiennes. And to my surprise, the second installment in this new trilogy decided to focus a lot on this doctor character, and it also decided to focus on my least favorite part of 28 Years Later, which is this group of people who show up at the end. And for that reason, I was pretty skeptical about The Bone Temple, despite it being helmed by one of the best filmmakers out there today, Nia DaCosta. And the film did away, again, kind of with the most unique aesthetic, that this franchise had. Like, it kind of did away with the iPhone, did away with the camcorder look. It returned to a more standard Hollywood approach, like 28 Weeks Later did, and we kind of saw how that turned out. So you can only imagine how surprised I was by how damn good this movie actually is. I'm not kidding, it might be the best in the franchise. I mean, again, take it with a grain of salt, because I said 28 Years Later was probably my favorite also up to that point. But I'm saying again now, The Bone Temple is even better than that movie, I think. It's really, really good. This movie manages to nail this seriously nuts combo of being brutal, cruel, sad, and then mixing it with so much humor and heart. It's a combo that shouldn't work at all, but it does. And part of it certainly goes to Nia DaCosta for directing it so well and making the tone work. Part of it also goes to Alex Garland, the writer, who has some wacky but cool ideas, and then the actors too, who just bring it all to life. I also have to say, this movie didn't go where I ever expected it to, and that made it very refreshing to watch. If you saw the trailers, I promise you, it doesn't spoil anything big from the movie, and I'm trying to be vague here for that reason, but this movie it's so fun because it doesn't ever feel predictable. Even if you've seen this type of movie before, even if you've seen other zombie movies, or even other 28 Days or Years Later movies, you've never kind of seen like a movie that goes where this movie I'm trying to be like, it's hard to really describe it, but it's so surprising. Like, I had no idea where this movie was going. Seeing the trailers, seeing other movies, I could not have told you in a million years. Even the poster, out of context, it's like, what is this movie? It's wild. It's a wild movie. But I will say, just to manage expectations, don't go into this film expecting to see a lot of the infected. There is a portion of this movie that focuses on them a lot, but it's not in the way you'd expect. And I think if you're kind of going in, with the expectation you're going to see a lot of infected running around and killing people, you're not going to get as much of that as you probably think you are. But what there is pretty brutal and exciting, and I really enjoyed that part of the movie. I'm just saying, lower expectations for the infected stuff, and maybe you'll find yourself pleasantly surprised by the amount there is. But I think, this movie definitely has a higher priority on the human characters. My only real issue with this film is that it took a bit to get into for me. It starts off a little slow, and also, as I said, we're focusing on probably the least favorite part of 28 Years Later, which is the characters who show up at the end of that movie, and they're kind of like Power Ranger ninja guys, and I'm like, that part to me was just very stupid in the last movie, and seeing them here, kind of that being my introduction to this movie, was like, I don't really like these people right now. I don't really have much investment, so the beginning of this movie was a little rough. Not that it was bad in any way, it just kind of was like, I don't really have any interest. So the movie had to build my anticipation for what was going to happen. Like going into this movie, I did not have any kind of like high hopes. I was just kind of like, all right, like low expectations. Let's see where it goes. I think the movie definitely picks up as it goes, and you see the doctor character again, who I really liked in the last film. So once you get to that part, it starts coming together for me. Before that point, though, I was kind of having a little bit of trouble getting into it. But again, thankfully, by the time you get going, it's really, really good. But this is really a strange case of a movie that is largely a filler gap movie, which is also kind of what I feared it would be, but, it's so much more than that. It addresses a few things from 28 years later, and there's really only one big thing towards the end that seems important to know for a third movie in this trilogy, but everything this movie does, it just does so well, and even though it's kind of like a filler movie, it's like the best kind of filler. Like when you're watching a TV show and you have that one episode that isn't really related to the plot very much, but it's just so engaging and well made that you're like, this is like the best episode in the whole show. That's kind of what the Bone Temple is. It's like a bit disconnected from everything, but it's so satisfying and so entertaining that I just highly, highly recommend it. I really can't recommend this movie enough, especially if you're a fan of the other films. It's ridiculously entertaining and easily the first, not just good, but potentially even great movie of 2026. Still very early in the year, but I do think I'll be thinking about this film for a long time, and you should absolutely go check it out. So I'm going to give 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, a B+. Alright, and next up is Mercy. This is going to be a long rant on a fascinatingly dull movie. I'm not gonna bury the lead. I didn't think the trailers for this movie looked any good. I didn't expect this movie to be good, and as I was watching the movie, I kept thinking to myself, yeah, this isn't good. If you saw the Amazon Prime Video War of the Worlds movie last year and thought, wow, I wonder what a big budget version of that would look like, then here's your answer. Both are released by Amazon, funny enough, and one of the producers is even involved with both films, so there definitely is some kind of like, sort of like a connection between the two, but the similar thread here is that they're both Screen Life movies. If you don't know what that is, it's basically a movie where the vast majority, if not the whole movie, takes place on a screen, and we're watching a lot of footage that is using, other screens like phones, computers, desktops, whatever, and software and cameras to tell the story. Movies like Unfriended, Searching, and as I mentioned, the recent War of the Worlds movies all use this technique. It can really be hit or miss, either enhancing a film or making it feel cheap. It's kind of similar to found footage movies in that way. It's really either a gimmick or a storytelling tool, no in between. You either love it or you hate it. And in the case of Mercy, this is easily the biggest scale we've ever seen one of these movies on. But that also leads to this larger issue here, where it feels too small to be this grand IMAX 3D blockbuster it claims to be, but it's also not small enough to fully take advantage of its strong premise and recover financially. This movie's definitely going to lose money because it really struggles because it's not really committing to either thing it needs to be. It's not this big action movie that you need to see on the big screen, and it's not small enough to really kind of take advantage of the Screen Life format it's doing. So it tries to kind of have this middle ground, but it doesn't really commit to either. It's very awkward. But anyway, the movie is about this time in the future where AI takes over the court system, and AI kind of becomes the judge, jury, and executioner. It follows a man played by Chris Pratt, who basically has 90 minutes to prove his innocence to this AI, or else he'll be executed. the movie kind of takes place within 90 minutes. It's in real time. Given the current state of AI, this movie is definitely timely in that sense, and I was a bit surprised that the movie doesn't really have much to say on that, surprisingly. Like, the AI, played by Rebecca Ferguson, definitely has a major role in the story, and the movie has a few attempts to point out the insanity of the court system in place in this world, and also how AI doesn't really feel. It just kind of goes off logic and reason, doesn't really have emotion. But it doesn't really even take a stance on the idea of AI judging people at will or determining a person's fate. Like, these are all things I think the movie had to address, because it's such a moral thing of, like, how can we judge someone, on their actions just, like, by someone who doesn't have any feeling? Like, we have a jury for that. But this is just using, like, logic of, like, do we think you did it? Do we think you didn't do it? I think it's like a very weird thing that this movie just chooses not to really address any of these moral questions or philosophical points. Like, I think if this movie was smarter, it would have, but it's really just trying to pander to, like, the mass audiences, so it's not really telling you anything you don't already know, and it's not really saying much of anything either. Weirdly enough, I think this movie actually might even be pro-AI, if anything, which I think is unfortunate, because I think, like, Hollywood in general, like, the film industry, everyone's kind of realizing the danger of AI, and for a movie to not really say anything, but maybe even kind of encourage AI is a bit concerning, and I think, makes me even, like, less likely to want to recommend this film. It kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth of, like, why was this what they chose to do? Like, is this what the studio feels? Like, is this, it's like, who thinks this? I don't know. It's just a very bizarre movie that I just don't know who it's for. But even looking past that, which is hard to do, there are so many crucial flaws with the world building. Like, it's only supposed to be a few years away, which feels very far out of reach to me. And the idea of a 90-minute trial is stupid. The way the court accesses data feels like a breach of confidentiality, and the way this court operates kind of just assumes every suspect and witness will be available at a moment's notice. But it doesn't really make sense. Like, what if someone's on a plane or taking a shower when the person's on trial? What if they're asleep, or what if their phone's dead? Like, what do they do? Like, are they supposed to just be around at all times? Like, no matter what? It just doesn't really add up. And it's like, what if new evidence presents itself after the trial and you just killed somebody who's actually innocent? What if the person was sleeping and then they wake up after the trial's over, like, oh, I had, evidence to prove their innocence? Like, these flaws just pop up left and right. The movie never addresses any of it. And I think if the movie just addressed some of these flaws, maybe it would have been more thought-provoking of, like, how could we even let such a terrible system like this be put in place? But no, the movie doesn't care about any of that. It's not thoughtful in any way. It's just kind of lazy world building. This movie gave me a headache, to be honest, just thinking about all the terrible plot holes here. Chris Pratt and Rebecca Ferguson are fine in the movie, but they're not very notable. Pratt feels somewhat miscast, and Ferguson doesn't have much to chew on since she has to be very robotic the whole time. It really doesn't help also that I didn't care at all about the lead characters or what would happen. This guy played by Chris Pratt is just not a very good person or even interesting at that, and I was really only curious to know if he actually did the crime, wasn't thinking about how much I don't want to see him killed or how much I do. And I think there's a very big difference in those two things, because I just, I was interested to know, like, oh, did he actually do the thing he's being accused of? But I wasn't, caring about what actually happened to him, which kind of kills any momentum the movie has. The one positive I will give the film, besides it being mercifully short, is that the real-time trial is somewhat effective in making things feel a little more urgent, like having this clock kind of tick down in the corner of your eye, like the whole time, does make things feel a little more like, okay, we really got to move things along. But the problem is it's kind of contradicted because the writing doesn't feel urgent. We see a clock, counting down, but very little of the reactions from the actors express panic. Chris Pratt doesn't look like he's less than 90 minutes away from death for more than a few minutes of the movie, and that's just, it really just doesn't make you feel very engaged. Like, if the main character who's on the verge of death doesn't care, why should I? And then the script has Rebecca Ferguson's AI character talking about, how urgent things are, how we gotta move along quickly, but it's rarely conveyed that way, so really the script is all bark, no bite. What else? The side characters are all pretty bad. The acting's bad. The actual details of what went down are kind of obvious. The third act also completely derails any goodwill from the rest of the movie because it gets so convoluted and stupid in trying to live up to being a blockbuster that it just kind of gets in the way of it. I was really bored for a lot of the movie. It has very little in the way of personality also, I will say that. It's just not even worth watching, even for the actors or the premise. Even the awful War of the Worlds movie, which is objectively worse than this, at least has a guilty pleasure factor going for it, so I could watch it, and laugh at it because of just how terrible it is. But Mercy isn't so bad it's funny, it's not so bad it's interesting, it's just bad. And I hate to tear it apart so badly, but I genuinely just have no clue who this movie is supposed to be for. Who's supposed to watch this? Because, it's kind of not really saying anything about AI. It's kind of maybe a little pro-AI. It doesn't really have any kind of sophistication. It's not smart. It's not even a good action movie or a blockbuster. So, I don't feel like people looking for a smart movie are going to be happy. People looking for just pure entertainment probably aren't going to be very happy either. I really don't know who to recommend this to. I don't think there's anyone to recommend this movie to. Maybe if you're curious, I don't know. I really don't like tearing it. I get how hard it is to make a movie, and it gives me no joy to just really say how bad it is. But I really just can't recommend it. It was so dull to me. So yeah, look, I'm gonna give Mercy a D-. It's really bad. And that about does it for this episode. If you want to follow my reviews, you can find me on Letterboxd at MovieKing1224. You can also listen to this podcast on your favorite apps such as Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. If you have any comments or feedback, I would love to hear it and improve the show. And of course, if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell to hear more like it. I appreciate you all so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.